My sister made fun of me for being adopted, so I made our parents wish they had chosen me twice. Growing up, my sister Brooke never let me forget I was adopted. While our parents showered us both with love, she would whisper things like, "They only got you because the agency had a 2-for-1 deal," or, "At least I know where I come from." I tried not to let it affect me, but every comment chipped away at my confidence. I was 8 years old when my parents chose me. They already had Brooke, who was 6 at the time, but they wanted another child. After seeing me at the agency, they said they felt like I was meant to be part of our family. But Brooke never accepted me. She hid my homework, blamed me for things she broke, and told other kids at school that I was secondhand. Despite her constant bullying, I worked hard in school while Brooke partied and barely maintained a mediocre average. I was taking advanced classes and studying late into the night. Our parents noticed the difference, but they didn't want to compare us. They praised us both equally, even when Brooke clearly didn't deserve it. Everything changed during our senior year. Brooke was failing 3 classes and at risk of not graduating. Instead of studying, she spent her time making TikToks about how adopted kids were damaged goods and posting Instagram stories mocking my generic brand DNA. One day, I overheard her on the phone with her friends saying, "My parents only adopted her because they felt sorry for her. But just wait until college applications come back. They'll realize blood is thicker than water. All their money will go to their real daughter's education." That was the last straw. I had already been accepted to Princeton with a partial scholarship, but I hadn't told anyone yet. I decided to let Brooke dig her own grave. Every time she skipped class to be with her boyfriend, I stayed quiet. When she forged our mother's signature on her failed math test, I looked the other way. I watched as she sank deeper and deeper. On the day college decisions came out, our parents gathered us together. We were all in the living room, sitting with our eyes glued to our laptops. My dad, resting his chin on his hand, watched silently. My mom nervously paced back and forth, clutching a cup of cold tea. Brooke seemed way too calm, which coming from her was almost always a sign something was about to explode. "Come on, Brooke, just open the email," my mom said, trying to smile. Brooke scoffed like the whole thing was a waste of time. "Relax, I know I got in." I didn't even need to look to know she still believed her own lie. She had applied to 7 universities, even with grades that barely met the minimum. For weeks, she spent more time curating her Instagram aesthetic for decision day than actually completing applications. Delusion was a thick layer in my sister's life. She clicked. Silence lasted a second, the kind of second that stretches out and becomes heavy in the air. Then she read. She frowned, scrolled down the page, read again. "This is a mistake," she muttered, bringing the laptop closer to her face. "Sweetheart?" my dad asked, his voice thick with concern. "Rejected." She spat out the word like poison. "They said my application doesn't meet academic requirements. This is wrong." I had letters of recommendation. My stomach twisted, but I held back the smile that threatened to escape. I know it's cruel to take joy in someone's fall, but there was something cathartic about watching her arrogance crumble, layer by layer, as if reality was finally giving back everything she had thrown at others. One by one, Brooke opened the other emails. All the responses were variations of the same polite sentence. "Unfortunately, your application was not selected in this cycle." She went pale as paper. For the first time in a long time, Brooke was speechless. My father cleared his throat. "Sweetheart, maybe we can look at other options. Community colleges, trade programs." "No," she cut him off, slamming the laptop shut. "This doesn't make sense. I deserve to get in." That's when I opened my email. Without much ceremony, I left my laptop screen clearly visible on the table. The word "congratulations" stood out at the top of the digital Princeton letter. My mom leaned in, reading slowly. Then she turned to me, tears in her eyes. "And you already knew?" I nodded. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I knew this day would come," I replied, and I wanted it to speak for itself. Brooke let out a dry laugh. "Of course. The prodigy orphan. How cute. Do you think that changes anything?" "I don't," I replied, staring at her. "But you will." She stood up so fast she nearly knocked over the chair. "Seriously? You're going to spend money on her? On someone who's not even your real daughter?" The slap came from a place no one expected. It wasn't aimed at me. It came from our mother. Not harsh, not violent, but direct, a small, sharp snap that lingered in the room like a ghost. "Don't speak like that ever again," she said firmly. "You can be angry, frustrated, sad, but that doesn't give you the right to be cruel." Brooke froze. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she held them back with stubborn pride. "You chose her. You always chose her. You only had me because it was easy. You bought her." My mother sighed but didn't respond. My father tried to touch Brooke's shoulder, but she pulled away as if he were fire. She stormed out of the room and up the stairs. The sound of her door slamming echoed through the house like a silent scream. She didn't show up for dinner. Nor the next morning. Nor lunch. Her food remained untouched, her door locked, her Instagram silent for the first time in years. But the real shock came 2 days later. An email from the school principal arrived for my parents. Brooke had been reported for plagiarism in 2 assignments. One of the teachers had proof, screenshots, identical texts. The school would initiate a disciplinary process, and if confirmed, she could be prevented from graduating. My father stayed silent for hours, sitting on the porch with his phone in his hand. My mother cried quietly in the bathroom. I just went to my room and closed the door softly. For the first time, I didn't feel sorry. Not anymore. Brooke had built the world she lived in. I just let it collapse. And now she was trapped inside, alone, with the walls crumbling on her own lies. But I knew she wouldn't accept falling in silence. She was like a wounded animal, and wounded animals bite. It took 3 days. On the morning of the 4th, I found Brooke sitting at the kitchen table as if nothing had happened. Her hair was tied up in a messy bun, eyes hidden behind a pair of dark sunglasses, even indoors. She stirred her cereal with the spoon, no real intention to eat. When she saw me, she raised an eyebrow and said, "Enjoy the show? Did you tell the school too? Or do you want me to walk in on a silver platter?" "I didn't even have to tell them," I answered, taking an apple from the fruit bowl. "You were excellent at digging your own hole." She smiled, but it wasn't a human smile. It was the kind you see in alleys and cracked mirrors. "You think you won, don't you? It's not a competition." "Of course it is. It always was. You only won because no one expects anything from someone who came from the trash." I didn't respond. Not because the words didn't hurt, but because some part of me, a new part that had hardened, knew that she wanted the reaction. She wanted the conflict. She wanted something to bleed. But what really hurt was seeing our mother standing in the hallway, listening to everything. Brooke dropped her spoon when she realized. "If that's how you think about your sister," our mother said, "maybe you need to rethink more than just your grades." Then she turned and walked away. Brooke had never tolerated being ignored. And that was the first slap of ice. The school's punishment came quickly, suspension for an indefinite period, a formal investigation, nothing guaranteed about graduation. She cried in her room the first day, not out of regret but out of rage and humiliation. I heard the muffled sobs, the objects thrown against the walls. Then, silence. The following week, I discovered she had accessed my email. I found a suspicious login alert on my phone. Someone had tried to get in with my password in the middle of the night. I confronted her immediately. "Do you think I'm stupid?" she said. "You left your laptop unlocked. You touched my stuff. You got into my life. I'm just returning the favor." There was a moment of pause between us, one of those seconds of mutual recognition, when two people finally admit who they are to each other. In that invisible tension, there was an undeclared war. And war, I realized, requires preparation. That's when I started keeping evidence, screenshots, saved conversations. I recorded every little sabotage, the whispers, the deleted emails, everything. Not with the intention to use it. Not yet. But as a shield. I knew she wasn't going to stop. And I couldn't afford to fall into her game unarmed. Brooke, on the other hand, became more subtle. And that is what makes certain people dangerous, when fury turns into strategy. She began whispering to our parents about how I had changed a lot lately, how I seemed distant, how maybe I was overwhelmed. At first glance, it looked like concern, but I knew the tone. It was poison in homeopathic doses. My mother started asking me more often if I was okay. My father suggested I should ease up on my studies. One Sunday, both of them called me in to talk about academic pressure. Brooke watched everything from a distance with that half smile, like someone playing dominoes, waiting for the right piece to fall. "You've been really closed off," my father said. "We just want to make sure you're happy." "You're hearing this from her, aren't you?" I asked. They looked at each other. Silence. And then I knew. That night, I deliberately left my laptop open. I pulled up a fake email with a fictional message about me supposedly being suspended for using cheat sheets during a mock exam. A test. A bait. The next morning, my calculus teacher called me in for a strange conversation. "We received an anonymous email reporting you, claiming you cheated on the last test." I pretended to be surprised. I pretended to be scared. But inside, I was calm. Because the IP address of the anonymous email matched exactly with the account that had tried to access my profile days earlier. And because I had everything documented. I showed it all to the coordinator, screenshots, access logs, even the hallway security camera that caught the moment Brooke walked past my room the night of the incident. The school acted fast. This time there was no suspension. It was expulsion. The sound of her scream when she received the notice is something I will never forget, not out of pleasure, but because it was raw, animalistic. The last roar of a cornered beast. She tried to blame everyone, the school, the teachers, my parents, even me, but it didn't work. The mask had fallen. And underneath, there was nothing but dust. The next day, when I was leaving for school, I saw the suitcase by the door. "She's going to Aunt Anna's house," my mother said. Until we figure out what to do." "She was expelled, Mom." "She's still your sister." She didn't reply, just hugged me. A strange hug, full of silences. As Aunt Anna's car drove away with Brooke in the back seat, she looked out the window and smiled, not out of anger, not out of pain. A strange smile. Like someone who knew something no one else knew yet. And in that moment, a part of me knew, it wasn't over. The next week, the house felt cleaner, lighter. The silence between the rooms left space for ordinary sounds, the ticking of the clock, the wind tapping the hallway window, the creak of the backyard gate, to seem almost comforting. My parents walked more cautiously, as if they felt guilty about a piece they hadn't asked for, but couldn't deny. I kept going to school, packing my bags for Princeton, and counting the days until I could leave that place. But even while I studied, read, or ate lunch, I felt a shadow behind my neck. That invisible presence that something was moving just outside my field of vision. And then the notes started. The first was left inside my backpack, folded 4 times. No signature. Plain paper. Carefully written handwriting, too neat to seem natural. "You may have one, but no one likes someone who steps on others to climb." I showed it to my parents, but they acted like it was just something from a bitter teenager. "It's probably envy," my mom said, trying to smile. "You're going to Princeton. That bothers people." But it was more than that. I knew it. The second note, left in my school locker, read, "Everyone has secrets. Including you. I only need one to bring it all down." And that's when I started to suspect, Brooke had left a part of herself behind. As if even from afar, she could still pull invisible strings and move the pieces on the board. She had people at school who still defended her. A small but loud group. An army of people who saw her as a victim, the girl expelled by the elitist school, the rejected sister. Among them was Ryan, her ex-boyfriend, or maybe he wasn't her ex yet. Because the following Tuesday, I saw him leaning against the school wall, waiting for someone. When he saw me, he smiled. "Hey. Can I walk you home?" I refused. He insisted. "She just wants to talk, you know. She's sorry. I think you two should try." "You think?" I asked. "Or did she send you to think that?" He shrugged. "You won, okay? Everyone knows that. But I don't know. It feels wrong." I kept walking without saying anything else, but that same day my room was invaded. Nothing was stolen, nothing was broken, just disturbed. The closet was messy, the clothes folded differently. My notebook about Princeton was on the bed, open to a page where months ago I had written that I wasn't sure I could handle the pressure, that sometimes I felt alone, displaced, as if I were playing a role that didn't belong to me. On the page now, there was a new note: "It's going to be beautiful when everyone finds out that the perfect girl is falling apart inside." There in my room, alone with the paper between my fingers, I realized, Brooke wasn't just following me. She was building a narrative, a campaign. She was trying to turn me into her. The next day, I told my parents that someone had entered my room. "Did you lock the door?" my father asked, more worried about the details than the fact itself. "Do you seriously think I'm making this up?" My mother tried to hug me. I pulled away. "She's still here even if she's far away," I said, "and you're still pretending it's just a phase." "It's not. She's dangerous." They didn't respond. That night, I locked the door. I hid my notes. I changed the passwords on all my devices. And I left my phone recording in silent mode, pointed at the door. Nothing happened that night, but the next day, the video showed something strange. At 2:43 in the morning, the hallway light turned on, and the doorknob to my room turned twice, unsuccessfully. Then silence. The light went off. Goosebumps. Heart pounding in my stomach. I showed the video to the principal. I showed it to my parents. Everyone fell silent. "Do you think it was her?" my mother asked. I only replied, "If it wasn't her, then someone even worse is loose around here." It was only on Saturday that I got the call from Aunt Anna. "She's not here anymore," she said bluntly. "She left last night, said she was going for a walk. Left her phone, took some money, and didn't come back." My father dropped the phone onto the table. My mother sat on the floor without saying a word. I just closed my eyes, because I knew exactly what that meant. Brooke was out there, and now she had nothing left to lose. In the first 24 hours, my parents did what any adult would expect of themselves. They called friends, the police, hospitals. They filed a missing person report. They said words like concerned and worried, but they avoided any mention of what they were really feeling, fear. Not of what might have happened to Brooke, but of what Brooke might be doing. My father installed new locks on the windows. My mother started checking the front door every hour like an anxious ritual. I kept looking over my shoulder, even inside the house, as if at any moment she might crawl out of the wall like a living crack. At school, the tension was palpable. Some people knew. Others suspected. Some started looking at me like I had caused all of it. Ryan was among them. He stared at me in the hallways with that face of someone who thought he knew something important. I pretended not to notice, but I knew he was with her, emotionally at least, maybe more. On Tuesday, I found my locker scratched. Those who climb by stepping on others fall bleeding. They reported it to administration. They cleaned it. They gave a generic warning to the whole class. No one took responsibility. I didn't cry. I didn't tremble. But that night, my father slept with a kitchen knife beside the bed, and my mother wedged a chair under their bedroom door. Brooke was becoming a presence, not just physical. It was as if she had infected the environment. A fever spreading through classmates' stares, through the teachers' fear, through the neighborhood's complicit silence. Because what no one wanted to say out loud, but everyone knew, was this: Brooke was capable of anything. And then she appeared, not at home, but in the graduation speech. At my graduation. It was a week away. I had been invited to give the main speech as the top of the class. The student going to Princeton, who overcame so many obstacles, so the principal said, smiling without knowing half of it. The night before, I received an email from the school confirming the speech. In the attachment, the final text, reviewed by administration. But the file wasn't mine. Instead of the speech I had written, there was something completely different, a manifesto. It began as a public letter by Brooke, narrating the whole truth about me, a manipulative girl who ruined her own sister out of envy, who forged evidence, who always wanted to take her place. She lied to everyone. The final sentence was a blow. Maybe it's true that blood doesn't make a family. But sometimes, blood is what drips when the mask falls. I dropped the phone and ran to my laptop. The original file had been deleted, replaced. Every copy, every backup version, gone. Emails, disappeared. How she managed it, I didn't know. But the signature was clear. Brooke. The next day, I brought everything to the school administration. The tech department confirmed the file had been sent from my email, but the access had been made using my login from an unknown IP address. Ryan worked part-time in the library. He had access to the computers. The school asked me to rewrite the speech. They promised to review it personally. Just a scare, they said. But they knew, she was closer than ever. On the day of the ceremony, my mother helped me put on my gown. Her hands were trembling, but her smile was firm. "You made it here. No one can take that from you." In the car, my father didn't say a word. And deep down, he was afraid that the ceremony would end with more than just diplomas. At school, the gates were more guarded. But security doesn't stop ghosts. The auditorium was full, white chairs, artificial flowers, the sweet, stifling smell of cheap perfume. The speeches began, students, coordinators, parents. When they said my name, I walked to the stage feeling the weight of the world on my shoulders. Each step like walking toward judgment. I took the microphone. Breathed. Looked at the audience. She was there, in the back row. Dark shirt. Hair tied back. Dark sunglasses. A cap pulled too low. But I would have recognized her even in the dark. My blood froze, but I went on. "Good evening, everyone," I began, voice steady despite my pounding heart. "We're here today to celebrate, to remember that we made it this far, and that alone is an achievement. But we're also here to acknowledge that the road to this stage is not always fair. Not always kind." I continued, improvising where the speech had been erased. I spoke about what it's like to grow up with someone trying to erase you. What it's like to fight for a place in a house that was already built for someone else. I spoke of pain and silent courage, without names, without revenge, but every word was a subtle blade. Brooke stared at me like a sphinx, unblinking, unsmiling, like someone waiting for a signal. I ended the speech under applause, but the eyes had all turned to the back row. She was no longer there. I left the stage with my heart in my throat. Went straight to the backstage room, accompanied by 2 security guards at the school's request. Inside, I found a brown envelope with my name on it. Inside, a photo. Me, as a child, sleeping in my bed. And a figure in the corner, dimly lit, a shadow cast across the face. But I recognized the scarf around the neck. Brooke. On the back of the photo, a sentence written in red ink, "The house is not yours." It never was. And I still have the key. I stared at that phrase for so long the words started to blur. The weight of the paper in my hands was ridiculously light, but it felt like it was pressing on my chest, as if it were more than a note. As if it were a warning. A vow. Or a sentence. I didn't tell my parents that night. I knew what would come, more locks, more cameras, more empty promises of everything will be okay. But none of that would stop Brooke. The problem was, they still thought she was a person in crisis. I had already understood, she was a growing threat. The next day, I checked every lock in the house. All were intact. No signs of forced entry. No broken windows. The guest room, where she had slept for years, still held some remnants, books she never read, notebooks full of blank pages, photos of the 2 of us that now looked like jokes. But there, inside one of the closets, I found something that shouldn't have been there, a dark wooden box, locked with a simple padlock. It was dusty, as if forgotten. But I knew, Brooke never left anything by chance. I broke the lock with a hair clip. Inside, I found a stack of paper clippings, old notes, printed messages, all mine. Messages I'd written. Gifts I had given. Even fragments of school assignments with teachers' comments. It was as if she had made a file on me. An obsession. But the worst part was the diary. It wasn't hers, it was mine. My old diary that had disappeared years ago when I was 12. I thought I had accidentally thrown it out, but there it was, with pages marked by unfamiliar fingers, sentences circled, fragments highlighted, small notes in the margins, like an editor reviewing someone else's story. She had been studying me for years. On the last page, in fresh ink, she had written, "The world loves you now, but the world loves victims. Let's see what happens when you become the villain." I closed the diary. I sat on the floor of the room and breathed. This was it. She wasn't going to stop. She wasn't going to run. She was going to reverse roles with me. And worse, I was alone. I returned to my room and locked the door. I grabbed my phone and called the only person who might be in contact with her. Ryan answered on the 3rd call, voice low, sleepy, or pretending to be. "Are you with her?" I asked bluntly. Silence. "I know you are. Just tell me one thing, is she okay?" More silence, then a whisper. She's calm, but not like before. Like she's decided, you know? Decided what? She won't say. But she's collecting things. Photos. Videos. Recordings. Of you, of the school, of your mother. All because she wants to tell her side. Make the world listen. Only. I don't think she wants justice. I think she wants a scene. I swallowed hard. Tell me where she is. I can't. But, be careful tomorrow. She said it would be tomorrow. Then he hung up. The next day, my mother woke me up before the alarm, face pale, phone trembling in her hands. Brooke, she only said. Open the school group chat. Now. I opened it. Brooke had posted a video. The title, The Truth About My Perfect Sister. The thumbnail was a collage of our photos, me smiling on the graduation stage, her crying on the school steps, our father in the background with a face of disappointment. Layered drama. I clicked. The screen went dark. Her voice began, low, trained, like a grim documentary. She talked about me, but not as a sister. As a character. As a villain. She told our stories with the roles reversed. Said I had sabotaged her since we were kids. That I was the one who spread rumors. That I forged evidence. That I manipulated our parents. That I used my status as a poor, adopted orphan as a shield to hide a cruel and ambitious mind. The video had photos. Edited clips. Scenes taken out of context. Even the graduation speech was included, with cuts that distorted my words. When it ended, I was shaking. And the comments had already started to pour in. Damn, I never thought she was like that. She really seems calculated in that speech. Adopted and fake? Wow. My father came into the room, face red. We're going to take this down. Sue. Call the police. My mother just sat down. She cried like someone who had lost something that was still right in front of her. But I didn't. I stayed quiet. Because at that moment, I realized, Brooke had done it. She didn't want justice. She didn't want to come back. She wanted to leave me here in her place. And deep down, I knew, she had won something. Maybe not the war, but the spotlight. The rest of the day was a whirlwind. School, suspended pending investigation. The internet, a nightmare. People looked at me in the street like something was wrong, but they didn't know what. A silent, constant judgment. That night, I received a message from an unknown number. Now we're real sisters. Brooke. You feel what I felt. You sleep in fear. You wake up trying to remember who you are. Welcome to my world. With love, Brooke. And no matter how much I wanted to hate her, no matter how much I wanted to destroy her, the truth was only one. She no longer needed to be here to haunt me. She had already entered, through the front door, with the key that, after all, had always been hers.